Hello everyone, and welcome to another video on game collecting. I would like to start today with the PS3, which was my first console, my introduction to gaming. The PS3 had a pretty rocky start, as many of you will probably remember. Many of the launch titles did not cover themselves with glory. So I thought I do want to cover the launch of the PS3 because we want to look at the whole life cycle of the console and at the whole range of games that was published. So the launch titles are important. I can't skip them, but we'll try and be brief about it. And I thought I'll couple it with another topic, make the video a bit more interesting, and that is a question I've had from many of you. What do I recommend for people who want to start collecting games or have just started and are maybe struggling a bit? What do I recommend in terms of what sites to follow or to use, what channels, what software? Well, that's obviously a big topic. If you want really in-depth advice, I'm probably not the best person because, as I've mentioned before, I'm an eclectic game collector. I wouldn't say I'm casual, I don't think so, but I'm not a professional either. I'm somewhere in between in that murky territory. And eclectic means I like to roam around freely and sample a bit here, taste a bit there, try and cover as much as I can, whatever appeals to me, and not be bound by any strict rules or boundaries. Now, you may remember in my introductory video to game collecting, I did recommend that you set yourself some boundaries because I think it's a good way of going about it. And many of you have commented and said you thought that was a really great idea, that it would help you a lot in keeping the game collecting organised and contained, to stick to one genre or even one franchise. It makes it a lot easier, and I think so too. But that's not how I started, because I never decided to collect video games. I literally just sort of fell into it. What I can give you is a lot of advice with hindsight, what mistakes I made, how you can maybe avoid some of the mistakes and do it better for your own situation. However, please don't ever be frightened of making a mistake. That's the one advice I always give for almost any situation. Please go and do make your own mistakes. Don't be worried. If somebody comes along and says, "Oh, you bought that game, that's a super big mistake, you paid too much, it's not worth that, it's got no value in your collection," or "this person is not a friend, they're trying to show off or something," you decide yourself whether you think it was a bad choice to make or even a mistake. But you can only do so sometime later, when you can reflect back, when the situation becomes clearer. Don't be put off easily. I made some purchases that were pure impulse buys, and afterwards I thought, what have I done, I put it aside, and maybe a few years later I look at it again and I thought, actually that turned out quite well. I'm glad I've got it in my collection because either the game turned out better than I thought, or it turned out there weren't that many copies around now it's suddenly considered valuable, desirable. Oh, you bought that 3 or 5 years ago. Oh, lucky you. Oh, that was a good choice. Oh, suddenly the tune has changed. Yeah, don't be easily put off. Even if it doesn't turn out that well, it's something you can learn from. You look back, you decide, where did I go wrong? Nowadays I would make a different decision. That happens to me all the time, and that's how you learn. You can learn a lot by listening to people with heaps of experience, but as we all know, there's a big gap between theoretical knowledge, and then practical application. In a specific situation, we're often called like a rabbit in the headlights, and we think, oh, what do I do? It's natural, it's human. Work through those situations and accept that once you've made a choice, made a purchase, decided to go ahead with something, embrace it. It was your decision at the time, and only time will tell how it all turned out. And in future videos I will show you some of my games that I never had any thought at the time as to what might happen. Surprising things happen. There aren't too many with the PS3 where I would say you see these, meteoric spikes or something. But there are a few, I would say, of moderate value. This is the situation you tend to see more with the older retro games. Now, as to what might prove helpful for you starting out learning about game collecting, I think YouTube is actually not a bad place. As you all know, there are millions of gamers on YouTube, and they've all got channels covering the whole spectrum. You will naturally come across channels that are of interest to you as you look for information on games, for reviews, for insights. I think it's important to make your own discoveries there. But there are a few channels that I have followed over the years and that actually got me interested in hanging on to physical copies, even looking for them, and how to develop an eye for what's important, for what might be a good pick. I will just mention a few of those channels because obviously there are too many. I can only pick a few, so please bear that in mind. They are ones that I tend to watch regularly. When a video notification comes in from that particular channel, I'm 99% likely to click on it and check it out. So I'll start off with the very first channel that I remember subscribing to. That is actually a channel run by someone who not only plays and streams video games, but who also collects them and who is deeply, deeply knowledgeable about them. And I've loved this channel over the years. It is run and presented by Dorr. And Pete has an incredibly calm and quiet way of talking about games, and that naturally appeals to me. And I think I learned an awful lot, especially in the early days when I basically didn't have a clue how anything worked with video games. But I guess I was lucky in that I know this is a video about the PS3, which is why I'm now talking about the PS2. Please forgive me. I very early in my video gaming life decided to get a second-hand PS2. So that would have still been in 2013, I'm pretty sure. because I realised as I got into the PS3 that there were a lot of titles that had been ported from the PS2, but that there were quite a few that weren't available. And at the time, my EB Games shop had, I wouldn't say a warehouse full, but they had stacks of PS2 games that were constantly being traded in as people were buying PS3 games or something else. The PS2 was being retired. There were huge numbers of games just literally lying about in the shop. I happened to talk a lot with one particular shop assistant who was himself a PS2 collector. I got naturally curious and started buying up PS2 games to go with my, $40 second-hand PS2. Pete Dorr was covering a whole variety of platforms, and many of the older ones that weren't really what I was doing, but also PS1 and PS2. And he's still doing it to this day. I just quickly checked his channel, and one of the recent videos is Rare, Obscure and Hidden Gem PS2 Recommendations. Well, this is the sort of thing I enjoy watching and listening to. And I would say if you're interested in these older platforms, this is exactly the type of video you will find both enjoyable and informative. So Pete Dorr was hugely influential for me in my early days and continues to be to this day. Another channel I greatly enjoy and always appreciate, because I'm very much in the RPG space, as you know, RPGs and JRPGs, is SuperDerek RPGs. While Derek doesn't do videos which sort of show a complete collection, it's mainly reviews, and he also streams, but of course his own collection is formidable, and games have to pass a certain quality level to qualify for being included in his famous game collection. So you really can't go wrong, especially if you are interested in classic RPGs. What I find is that by watching a real quality channel, a person who is both deeply knowledgeable and deeply committed to the art form of video games, that you will learn a lot that way, rather than listening to someone prattling on about how they spent hundreds of dollars on this, that and the other, and never look at what it actually is they bought. Now, when we talk about video game collecting, there is one channel you simply cannot go past, and that is Metal Jesus Rocks. He is an institution, really. Absolutely amazing. I really don't know what you could possibly be looking for about video game collecting that Metal Jesus hasn't covered. The breadth and depth of his collecting knowledge is probably unrivaled. I love the way he talks and presents everything. Despite having a huge channel and many admirers, he always comes across as a very regular and modest type of person, and I find that very appealing. I'm much more likely to listen to someone like that than people who might be, bragging. I don't like people who brag. Another channel I have stayed subscribed to over the years is one that covers a lot of PlayStation topics, but also other platforms. And that is someone called Ryan, but you will know him by his channel name Mystic. Now, once again, someone incredibly knowledgeable who does regular videos on the games he acquires for his collection. What he often does, and this is very entertaining, is he buys a huge box from someone somewhere with, loads of games, and then does a blind unboxing. And I'm always hugely impressed how just off the cuff he can talk about dozens of individual games just like that, with great knowledge and great depth. It's a bit like being there and being able to pick the brain of someone who knows a lot about game collecting. That's what his videos are like. I think this is the sort of thing you were asking me about, I hope. Anyway, if you don't know his channel yet, please do check it out and also make your own discoveries. But these are just some hints about channels that I think have stood the test of time, at least for me personally. You may not like them, or they may not give you what you think you need, but it's somewhere to start. Now, there are, of course, many other channels who talk in between about the games they acquire and collect, and nowadays many people look back at what game collecting was like in the 1990s, 2000s, etc., and comparing it with nowadays. Currently, I see there's a whole flood of videos about game collecting, and 2022 sucks. The situation is not ideal. I think most of us can agree upon that. So there's a heap of videos out there currently, probably too many. Just to mention that, of course, I'm putting links to all the channels, channel names and links, in the description below the video. You need to, unfurl that. There will be heaps and heaps of links and info and additional info in there. So if you want to follow anything up, that's where you'll find it. There must be women collectors. Have I forgotten them? There are some good ones. One very famous collector is a lady in North America called Kelsey Lewin. You may know the name. She runs a video game store, I believe in Seattle. The moment she appears on camera, she always brightens everyone's day. She is, once again, a collector of metal. That's not metal like in Metal Jesus, it's the other metal, I mean. She does sometimes collaborate with Metal Jesus as well. So again, someone with an incredible depth of knowledge and experience, both in the video game retail industry as well as a gamer. Another channel I used to keep up with is Daria Plays. It is unfortunately, or has been dormant for a while now, but Daria operates more in the retro game sphere, but she covers a lot of things. I find that she posts often interesting stuff on Twitter. Twitter is another social media platform that is really ideal for gamers and collectors. I always check out, if I come across someone on YouTube, I check if they're on Twitter and vice versa. I think the two complement each other well, and those are the only two platforms I operate on myself. You can go to Facebook, of course. I can't give you any advice there because I'm not on Facebook, but I know a lot of gamers and collectors are, and of course there's a Facebook marketplace, which I know a lot of people use to get games for their collections. Another platform that can be useful is Reddit. There is a very large subreddit called simply Game Collecting. Link is down below. If you want to learn about game collecting, there is a lot of material there. It can probably be a bit overwhelming if you're just starting out, but the thing is, you can post questions there. If you need some help, Twitter or Reddit might be a good place to post your question. As I mentioned in my introductory video, you can even restrict your collecting to just one franchise. And that is not a bad idea when one of the really, really big ones is involved, and that is Final Fantasy. And there's one person that springs to mind immediately when you say Final Fantasy and collecting. There's only one person I can think of, and that is the absolutely wonderful Yunalescka. She is a streamer, and she is a collector extraordinaire. Her channel is mainly about the streaming, the gameplay, but on Twitter she has a very, very large following and shows a lot of her collecting activities there. If you're really deeply into Final Fantasy, I would say you definitely need to check out Yunalescka. Now, there are two ladies who, in a quiet but expert way, cover games, game reviews, and show their game pickups regularly. I always find them really interesting and good to watch. And they are Femtrooper, and Pam runs a channel, Cannot Be Tamed. And I just want to finish up my overview of the channels, the social media that might be helpful for game collecting, with the one channel that for me stands for the spirit of video games and collecting physical copies, and that is the Happy Console Gamer. If you want to understand what game collecting really is about, I really don't think you can go past his channel. And the important thing is that Johnny has a way of simply talking about his own experience, passing that on. And he's a good storyteller, and that helps. And you can learn from that what you want. He's not pushing anything at you. It's his own enthusiasm that comes across so well, and that captures so many of his viewers.